France. What do you think? Thank you. Thank you. Merci. The continuation of what I was speaking about in Assisi, because this city here is one of the most memorable things that ever happened to me in my life. The procession, which I did last night, we'll do tonight, and we'll do tomorrow night, it's just so powerful. I remember the first time that I was here in Lourdes, and we went to the procession, and that evening there were estimate between 15 and 16,000 people at the procession. And what was most noticeable about it, for me, was that there was no organization. It just happened. People found a way to light them, and people started helping each other lighting their candles. The people in wheelchairs and the people in stretchers and so on at that time were up at the front, along with the statue of the Virgin. And we walked, last night it was an hour, at that time it was longer, it seemed like it was a couple of hours. And there were people there from all over the world, just like there were people there from Asia and Africa and South America and America, Europe, Mexico, Canada, all over. And no one was pushing, no one was demanding anything, no one, there wasn't one person that looked upset. I would notice that people were all smiling and they were all very peaceful. And it wasn't just because it was a solemn religious experience. It was people who had come to this place that is so popular. It's the second most popular place visited in France after Paris. And a lot of people come to France. So a lot of people come to this little community. And it all started with the vision of a little girl, a little 13 or 14-year-old girl back in February of 1858. One thought, one experience, and look around you at what has happened here. Huge cathedrals and people coming from all over the world, buses, tours. I even wonder about some of it because so much of it has been commercialized. And people are out there trying to sell you holy things and charging a little more than if they, and not giving you the right change. Some of it just seems a little strange to me, but nevertheless, it's just such a magical place to come to. And I remember during the walking how peaceful it all was. Once you go through the procession and hear the Ave Maria, it stays with you. You're going to bed, Ave Maria. You wake up, you're humming that tune, this beautiful song. And it's interesting that this takes place between April and October every day of those 6 months. Night after night after night after night, 10, 15, 16, 18,000 people doing this procession. Nobody advertises it, nobody tells them where to go, nobody sells tickets, nobody, it's just come here and be in this beautiful, peaceful place. And then we left here when I was here the last time, and well, my wife and I flew to Paris. And we got into Paris, and we checked into the hotel, and turned on the TV, and there were people in the news at this time. There was something going on over in the Middle East, which there's almost always something in the Middle East. And it was a group of about 20 or 25 people who were throwing rocks at the guards and the people just in conflict, back and forth, throwing rocks, and you saw the police with their shields in front of them and knocking off the rocks. And somebody didn't like something that was going on someplace, whether it was even what country it is now, I don't even remember. And I remember saying to my wife, isn't it interesting that the world's press is focused on 20 or so people throwing rocks at each other, and we just left a city where 15,000 people have gathered to march in peace. And we put all of our attention on what it is that we don't want, or what it is that we don't like. And this doesn't take 15,000 people showing up to walk in peace and have a candlelight vigil and do a procession, all speaking different languages, listening to Ave Maria being sung in French and in German and in English and Spanish, that would be so newsworthy that would be like every night we'd say, look, here we are, here's what humanity looks like, here we are doing it again. Here are people coming to this place that is such a place of hope, a place of love. And yet we don't. And it's something to keep in mind as you listen to what I have to say to you today. Because we have a tendency to think that that the world is so negative and that there's so many horrible things and that we're all about violence. But in fact, you know, for every act of violence in the world, there's a million acts of kindness. And I'm not suggesting that the newspapers ought to cover every act of kindness. But I remember seeing a study one time about serotonin. And serotonin is the component in the brain, the enzyme in the brain, that actually makes you feel good. So that when you have a high production of serotonin, you feel good. And an antidepressant is really a drug that is designed to stimulate the production of serotonin in the brain, to make you feel better and not feel so depressed and so full of despair. And in this study, it's very hard to measure serotonin, but they found a way through the metabolites in the urine to measure how much serotonin was being produced in the brain and in the intestines, where also serotonin is produced. And they would measure it first when people would be the recipients of an act of kindness. So that if I were to extend an act of kindness to you, for example, you as the recipient of that would, if I gave you some money, or if I helped you walk across the street, or if I just said something nice to you, or did something in a way of kindness, and then they would measure the production of serotonin in the body, they found that the recipient of an act of kindness has their serotonin levels increased, which is, I think it's a very important thing. I mean, what the Dalai Lama once said, that if we could take every child on the planet at the age of 5 and have them meditate for 1 hour a week on compassion, that in one generation we could end all violence on the planet. In one generation, just 1 hour a week, every 5-year-old in every country, everywhere. Have them do that every week until they're adults. It would be impossible any longer to have any violence. Well, the second part of this experiment was that they would measure the person who is offering an act of kindness. So the person who says, may I help you? How can I serve you? Here's some extra money for you. Here's some food for you. Here, let me help you. Let me lift this for you. Let me. It's one of the things I do when I get on airplanes, and I sit down, usually in the front row, and I watch people come in. And any person who's a little short, who can't reach the top, for me, that's an opportunity for my serotonin level to increase. It is, because the people who offer an act of kindness have their serotonin levels increase just as much as the recipient. So that when you are giving assistance or help or love or kindness to someone else, you are actually making yourself, biologically, chemically feel better by increasing your serotonin levels. So any opportunity that you ever have to do that, last night when I went to the procession and saw this beret, and I said, I gotta have that. That's just so cool. And the lady came out and she was just all over, just like somebody that was going to buy something for her. And I said, how much is it? My children were there with me, and she said, 15 euros. Now, one of my children is very good at getting people to lower their prices, negotiating down. I think I could get that for you for 10, 5 maybe. And the lady came over and I handed her a 20 euro note, and she went to bring me change. I said, no. I said, I think it's worth 20 euros. I love this so much. And I felt good. And she felt great. In fact, I even saw her today out there and wanted to know, would you like to buy some more of this thing? But the interesting part of this experiment that I'm sharing with you here today is that they measured the serotonin levels of people who observed an act of kindness. And when someone watches somebody else extend kindness to someone else, not only does the recipient and the person who offers the kindness, but the person who observes it has their serotonin levels increased as well. Think of the implications of that. That as we get to a place where we watch people do nice things, we feel better just doing it. There's a show on television, what's it called, about where they go out and they redo somebody's house, Extreme Makeover Home Edition, okay? Because my kids watch. And it's like, you watch that show, and it's like you get to, they do all of these things, and they bring people in, and they redo cabinets, and they give them a new house, and they give them new beds, and they give them a new garage, and they put a car in the garage, and it just keeps getting more and more. But people aren't waiting for that. What they want to see is the reaction of the people when they show them what it is. And everywhere, it's like the whole country just goes on a serotonin rush. It's so much better than ecstasy. Or rather, it is ecstasy, and you don't need a pill to take it. So that's kind of how I feel about this place here in Lourdes, where we are. That I came here to do the procession. I'm not interested in castles. In fact, I don't really much like looking at castles, because I know that they were built by slaves. And I still have issues with that in my heart. So, but when I do the procession and I watch people, last night I watched my daughter Serena. Nobody had lights for fire for the candles, and I watched her just take off. And she came back with a lit candle, and she must have lit 20 people's candles for them. People who didn't even speak the language, and I was just so proud to watch her wanting to serve, wanting to help. It's not much; it's just lighting a candle, but it's such a good feeling, and to watch that take place, throughout the whole procession. So when you do the procession, I'll be doing it tonight, 9 o'clock, and I'll be doing it tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, and the weather is no possibility of a reason to not do it for me. It doesn't make any difference what the weather is like. Because something has happened to me. That St. Francis has really dug himself into my soul. I've been getting up at 5 o'clock every morning since the John of God experience that I spoke about in Assisi. And I told you that I've been infused with a sense of love that is just overwhelming to me. And I always wonder, what is this day going to bring every morning when I get up? And this morning I got up at about 20 to 5, and I did about an hour meditation. And then something in me said that, go sit outside. And I just I didn't have a shirt on, I just had like a bathing suit on. And I don't know if you were awake this morning at 6 o'clock, but it was a bit blustery out there for June in France. And it was raining. And I went out and I sat down to do my meditation. I have these 2 crystals that John of God blessed that I hold in my hand, and I just sort of, I asked for nothing other than, who am I to serve today? What can I do today? What am I, whatever is going to come, this is what I do, this is how I live now. And I sat there for about 3 minutes. And I looked back into the room where that nice warm bed was. Gary was sleeping, and I thought, gee, I'd really like to be back in that nice warm bed. And then all of a sudden a wind came through, and it really sent a chill through me. And then a gust of rain went across my face. And I said, that's enough of this. You know? And I went back in and got into the covers, and I said, I'll just meditate in here. Comfortable. And I felt so guilty. It's like, I've written books about how not to feel guilty. And here I am feeling guilty. And I've just been reading about Francesco and how he would sleep, you know, in the snow with a stone for a pillow, you know, without any clothes on, and how he would throw ashes into his soup so that it would taste even worse, and how his feet would be bleeding, and how he would, you know, just take this vow of poverty and everything he had give away. And I've been reading that and just returning from Assisi and coming here to this place, and I was about 10 or 15 minutes in there. It was just so warm. It was so nice. And I finally just said, the hell with it. And I about a half an hour out there in the cold, and got my message. In fact, wasn't sure what I was going to talk about here today, but got it there this morning. When I just allowed myself to not be so concerned with me and my own comforts, and to maybe just learn a little bit about not being so ego-driven and ego-centered. And as this has begun to happen for me, since I spoke to you about this healing experience that has been in my life for over 2 months now, some really dramatic things changed for me. Physically, what I eat, what I drink, it's all, anything that is poisonous doesn't look right. It isn't that I made some conscious decision to be a health nut. It just doesn't look right. I drank alcohol-free beer for the last 23 years. A couple of them every evening with my meal. And since that experience, I haven't touched one. It just doesn't seem like what I want to put into my body. I don't know why. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not passing any judgment on it. But it was like an instantaneous shifting away from it. I, every once in a while, would take a little puff of medical marijuana. Medical, of course, because I have leukemia, and I would take a little Bacalolo, right? And it's grown by God, and it's the gift of the gods, and I had all of the reasons why. And I have no position on that whatsoever, other than I just think we should legalize all drugs and get the crime out of this whole scene. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. And not just me, but the director of the FBI and every police commissioner in the United States and all over the world says that we could really solve so much of our criminal problem in our prison population by just stopping all this judgment and cleaning it up and so on. But at any rate, that's a different issue in a different place. But I look at that now, and it just doesn't look right. It just isn't something I want to tarnish my body with, and putting something into my lungs that might in some. I don't even have a judgment about it, or even a reason why. It's just not there any longer. Just not a part of what I want to do. It was a transformation. And what I want to say to you here in this on this tour is that anything that you have going on in your life that you know isn't salubrious, isn't healthful for you, whatever it might be, whether it's actions, the way that you interact with others, whether it's what you eat, what you drink, or whatever, that be open to the possibility that this can be eliminated with an intention. And when you have this intention, what happens is that you begin to have almost like a collaboration with fate. My teacher, Carl Jung, called it synchronicity. A sense of when you begin to align yourself in a higher way, thinking like God thinks, when you get there, that the right events, the right people, that which matches what it is that you would like to create for yourself, begins to show up in a very, very big way. Years ago, my friend Deepak Chopra and I used to tour the world and have these big auditoriums, like Wembley Stadium, and Wembley Auditorium rather, in London and in Greece and in Egypt and in Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and all over the United States and Canada and so on. And we did a lot of things together, and we put out a lot of programs. We used to do an interview thing we did with each other, which is the 4 ways to get strawberry ice cream. And I remember we created this right on stage together. And there are 4 ways. And Deepak would say, Wayne, what's the first way? And then I would ask him, what's the second way? And we would just play on stage, because we're very close. Whenever I have any issues about anything, and if I call Deepak, he has one word. Meditate. So with Deepak, I was going to talk to you about one of my meditate. And we'll do that in Dubrovnik, or in wherever we are in Medjugorje. We're going to do a group meditation and teach you one about the Moses Code. So the first way to get strawberry ice cream is to have a thought, because everything starts with a thought. And then you get up, and you get off of your couch, and you get on your bicycle, you get in your car, and you go for a walk, and you go to the store, and you purchase some strawberry ice cream, and you come home, and you say, I've got strawberry ice cream. And it doesn't seem like a very powerful spiritual way to get ice cream, but when you think about it, we don't even know what a thought is. You know, I mean, I have a good friend who's a brain surgeon, and he has said to me, you know, you always talk about the soul and all of that. He said, I've been inside many bodies, carved them up, and looked inside brains all the time. I've never seen a soul every place. And I remember stumping him one time when I said, well, when you're in there, have you ever seen a thought? No, I never really have seen it. So there are some things that you just can't see with your senses, can you? So it starts with an invisible thing called a thought. And then you act upon that thought, and that in itself is pretty powerful. Second way, more advanced way to get strawberry ice cream is to have a thought, gee, I'd like to have some strawberry ice cream. And you send one of your kids to get it. So you get to sit there and send someone else after it. They come back and they bring you your strawberry ice cream. It's a lot better. A lot less work. Third way to get strawberry ice cream is to have a thought, gee, I'd really like to have some strawberry ice cream. And then someone walks by, and you're sitting there, and you're thinking, I'd like to have some strawberry ice cream. And they say to you, excuse me, is this your strawberry ice cream? And when that happens, you go, whoa, booga, 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 what's going on here? I was just thinking about having strawberry ice cream, and you walk by and you give it to me. And that's called synchronicity. And that's when you begin to elevate your consciousness to move out of ordinary into extraordinary. When you begin to align yourself more with your divine dharma, with who you are, what you came into this world to do in the first place, you begin to align yourself that way. And as you do this, you begin to have these kinds of experiences where you're thinking about someone and you haven't talked to them for years, and you turn around and there they are in the grocery store right next to you, and you haven't seen them for 10 years. And you go, Sally, oh my God, Sally, I was just thinking about you this morning. Now when that happens to me, I go, of course. It happens to me all the time. Where I live over on Maui, I walk every day, and people will say to me, oh, I came here and I just absolutely knew for sure that I was going to talk to you. And even this morning I was saying to my wife, you know what, I'm going to run into Wayne Dyer. And then I do, and they look at me like I'm supposed to be surprised. And I say, of course. Don't you think I got your message? I was going to go that way, but I went this way today because I heard you. And you start to see that there's a force in the universe that's moving things around, right, that we are connected to. And then there's a fourth way to get strawberry ice cream, which is what I want to talk about today. And the fourth way to get strawberry ice cream is to have a thought, gee, I'd really like to have some strawberry ice cream. And you manifest it. That's someone bringing it right now. And when I say you manifest it, what I mean is that the gift of fish and loaves, which is what I'm speaking about here, is the gift that Jesus said, even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. So the ability to manifest something into your life means that there is a minimum time delay, and all of the things that I've been discussing here with the strawberry ice cream, there's just a longer period of time between the thought and having it show up. So that when you are saying to yourself, I'd like to have some strawberry ice cream, you have the thought, then you got to get your car keys, and you got to get on your bicycle, and you got to go, and there's this time lag between it. And as you elevate, as you move, you reduce the amount of time between the thought and its hardening into an object or into a fact. And this is a big thing about what I've just finished writing a book called Wishes Fulfilled. And it's really about putting this into practice. I'm not going to go into the whole thing here because I want to go someplace else today. And besides, you'll be able to read it, and it'll be out early next spring. But this thing called Siddhi consciousness, or Christ consciousness, is something that you have within you. The ability to have a thought and then have it show up. And I have seen it now as I get more into prayer or into conscious contact with God, especially early in the morning when there are fewer interruptions, when it's quiet, because Blaise Pascal, the famous French philosopher and thinker and mathematician, said all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And Melville said, God's one and only voice is silence. But when you go to that place, you have the ability to put a thought into your head and have it show up virtually instantaneously. You have that ability to do that. But the first thing that you have to be able to do is to banish all of the doubt. And that's where your limitations really begin to limit you in your life. The idea that that's easy for you to say, and you can do that, and Jesus can do that, and Bernadette can do that, but that's not something that I am capable of doing. When in fact, the same mind that was in Bernadette the same mind that was in Jesus Christ is in you. Have that mind in you, as St. Paul said. Have the mind in you that was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. And when you contemplate the same way as you believe God contemplates, you gain the same powers, because you become one with God as God. So what happens as this, especially for me now, I'm 71 years old and just always a student, always finding new things. And I've been lecturing about this for going on 4 decades, all over the world, and written 36 books and produced endless programs and so on, films. And yet, what has happened to me in just the last 2 months has been just so eye-opening and mind-blowing for me, especially as I was preparing to do this tour. Because this tour was something that I absolutely knew was going to be one of miracles for all of us. That this group was going to take this experience and spread it across the planet. Just enough of us, just a handful of us, can shift the consciousness of this entire planet. We can do it. We are obliged to. We're called together to do it. That's what we're here for. That's what this trip is really about. It's not about you seeing all of these sacred places. It's about you putting the energy that created the reason why people come to these places into your own heart. As the Sufis say, if you don't have a temple in your heart, you'll never find your heart in a temple. So it's not about the temples. It's about having that in your heart. And I have noticed things happening for me, with me, to me, that have been just astounding. As we left to come on this trip, this wasn't just the trip that we're on here. This, for me, was a much longer trip. I left Maui on the 8th of June and flew to London, lectured in London, and then stayed there for several days, and then flew from there and lectured in Rome, and then began this tour. So it's about 3.5 weeks of being on the road. And when we left, when Carrie and I left, we checked our luggage in at the Maui airport. And the flight I was taking was going from Maui to Honolulu, Honolulu to Newark, and then Newark with a 7-hour layover to London. And that's 11 time zones in one swoop. And that's not new to some of you in here, because you live in faraway places as well. But 11 time zones is a big shift in one day. But again, it just depends on how you process it and what you tell yourself about it. If you tell yourself it's going to be a difficult thing, and I'm going to struggle, and I'm not going to be able to stay awake, and I'm going to be all mixed up, and it's going to be terrible, and I'm just afraid that I'm not, if you do that, then you'll attract exactly that energy, because your subconscious mind cannot make a distinction between what it is that you are thinking and what it is that you are experiencing. And if you tell your subconscious mind that things are going to be terrible and it's going to be difficult and it's going to be a struggle, then it will offer you up opportunities that match up to whatever it is that you're placing in your mind. So we check. I go up to the woman there and at the counter, and I said, I'd like to check these bags all the way through to London, but we have a 7-hour layover in Newark. We're going to get a day room to just go watch a film or something and just relax there at the hotel. And she said, I'm sorry, but you cannot check your bags all the way through. You'll have to get them in Newark. And I said, no, I've already checked with the airline. My travel person took care of all of that. He assured me that it's no problem, that we don't have to do that. She said, I'm sorry, but if you're there more than 4 hours in the airport, you have to go get your luggage. So that can become I'm right and you're wrong, and get me a supervisor, and blah, 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 blah. Or you can just smile and say, something's going on here, and I'll just get my luggage when we get to Newark. And so they checked my bags into. So we get to Newark and go to collect the bags, and there's 4 suitcases, and I get mine. Carrie had one small one, and then her large one is missing, but there's one that looks exactly like it still going around the you understand, we're going for 3.5 weeks to be gone, and 6 hours later we're leaving for London, and there's an identical suitcase still going around a little carousel. So by the time everybody has left and 15 minutes have gone by, it's pretty obvious that somebody grabbed her suitcase that she thought was hers. 15 minutes have gone by, so off we go to the baggage claim to put in a claim, with all kinds of thoughts going through the head, like, how are we ever going to, we're going to London, and from London we have to leave from London, we got to go to Rome, from Rome we're going to, are they going to send this to Medjugorje? I mean, they've never even heard of Medjugorje. So what is she going to do? She's not going to have any luggage for the next for the next 3 weeks, and on and on and on. And we go to the girl up there, and we're filling out the little form, and we know exactly what has happened. Someone has just taken off with the bag. So we stand there for maybe 10, 12 minutes or so. Now been a half an hour since I had gotten my luggage. But I wasn't too concerned because I had my stuff. I didn't say that. I know I didn't say that. That's the ego part of me speaking. That's not my spirit. So all of a sudden standing there, now this is what happens, I'm telling you. This may not seem like much of a miracle when we're here in Lourdes, when we have the Virgin Mary making 18 visits to a young girl. But it's just as miraculous to me. Because just in 1 second, something came over me. And I jolted like that, and I just took off. Now it's been a half an hour. And I said, I'm going over to the carousel in case that person recognizes it and just comes back and maybe they'll bring the bag. And on my way to the carousel, I spot a woman going up an escalator at the Newark airport with 2 bags and on the telephone and another handbag on her. So this big pile of luggage going up. And I look at her and I stand at the bottom of the escalator. Now this all took place within seconds, all right? And you have to understand, if this would have been 5 seconds later or 5 seconds earlier, this wouldn't have happened. And this is a half an hour after, so I'm trying to really make you understand what is going on here. And I look at her and I think, nah, I can't go bother her. She's going to be upset. I'm going to go over to the carousel. And I go up to her and I said, something just says, go up the escalator. And I head up the escalator and I see this woman and she's down the hall and I tap her on the shoulder. I said, excuse me, were you on the flight from Honolulu? She said, yes. I said, that bag. I said, and all I had seen, I didn't even know what her bag looked like. It just was just a black sort of plastic kind of thing. And that's the only thing I just cited. I mean, it's like I didn't see anything other than that. And I said, I think maybe you got the wrong bag. She said, no, this is my bag. And she looked down and it had Carrie's name on it. And I came back down and we walked over there and she said to me, you're my hero. You can have anything you want. You're so wonderful. And I was thinking, it wasn't me at all. What are the odds? Think about that. Think about what are the odds. And that's what and that stuff has been happening to me. So I could fill up the rest of this time telling you stories like this that have happened to me just in the last month or so, or the last 2 months since April. Since this infusion of not just healing, but higher consciousness, higher awareness. It's just, it's like you begin to realize what Jesus meant when he said, with God all things are possible. And when I think about if I'd have just stood there 5 more seconds and said to her, you know, I wonder if I should go to the carousel again, it all had to take place exactly perfectly in that split second. And this woman was now on her way. And why she was still in the airport a half an hour later, wandering on the telephone, it turns out she was a belly dancer. And it was because we opened her suitcase just to find out if we could get a phone number so that we could call her. I didn't want her stuff. But she had a nice beret in there. No, that wasn't. And Carrie was thinking, I don't know, I might look good in some of these. It's true. And I went to her and I brought her down, and she was like a fan of mine. I mean, she, oh my God, I can't believe, oh, this is how I met you. I always wanted to meet you. But you arrange it a little different. And I always carry copies of my film, The Shift, with me to give to people that recognize me and so on. And I handed her that, and who knows, that film might change her life. We don't know where that's going to go. What her story is going to be. I'm sure she's telling this story to a belly dancing class right now, in Istanbul. I don't know where she is. But what happens is that this kind of thing where, and I just kept saying, even to the baggage lady, I kept saying, we're going on a trip called Experiencing the Miraculous. This is a frigging miracle. I mean, this is miraculous. And she said, no, we find luggage all. I said, no, you don't understand. This is a miracle. This is like. So it's like you start to pay more attention, and you start to realize that when you have the thoughts, like the story I told you the other day about Samir coming to my home. There's a whole series of those kinds of things that have been happening. And as you start to get to this place where you elevate your consciousness, and what we're going to move to now, as you get to this place where this becomes your way of being, where you're about serving, and you're about giving, and you're about not only increasing the serotonin levels, the feel-good enzymes in other people, but in serving them and making it happen for yourself. I mean, just telling this story makes me feel good. Making people realize that what looks like a disaster can, if you listen and you're willing and you banish the doubt. Because that's the thing. I mean, Kate and I were talking this morning about this business about doubt, that when people come in for a session with this craniosacral thing that I've been telling you about, that if they have doubt in their hearts about whether it's possible to move energy around and to experience it. How many have had the experience with Kate in here so far? Have you felt the shift in the energy? Has it been? It has? Yeah. And it's like, but if you go in there, and she was saying, well, this group, she said, I've never been with such a group of people where the instant I put my hand down there, they recognize it because they're open. This is a group of people who flew all the way to Rome to be with us about miracles and miraculous experiences in their life. These are open people. These aren't people who say, "I want proof. I want a mathematical formula." And and when you have that closed, that whole thing that's at the casa at Abadiânia in Brazil, where John of God is from Saint Ignatius of Loyola. For those who believe, no words are necessary. For those who don't, no words are possible. And it's really about opening yourself up to it. So when I think about my own journey, where it has taken me in my life, and I have seen healing miracles take place. Going back to about 14 years ago or so, my daughter Sage had and she was 6, and she was raised around parents who were weird. I mean, if kombucha was something that people were talking about, we were growing mushrooms in the refrigerator, you know, and watching them have babies, you know. And if pycnogenol was something that's going to make your brain work better, you know, we got a gross of them coming into the house. We're open. It's like Tilopa once said, you know, the great Sufi teacher, you know, have a mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing. Well, little Sage had these warts, these flat warts growing on her face. And she wrote a story in a book that I wrote called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And, but she had an experience, and it was one of those magical kind of things that happened where these things were growing, first of all, on her face, around her mouth, and then they were heading up towards her eye, and then they were going under her nose and around her, and they just seemed to be getting worse and bigger, and we took her, this little girl in the first grade, we took her to a friend of mine, Kenny Malin, who was a medical doctor, a dermatologist on Maui, and she had a conversation with, well, you know what, rather than me tell you about it, I'll have you, she's here in the room, and maybe she can just share with you what she did, because she's a published author. She was telling us the other night when Serena was giving her some grief, she said, you know, you may have a contract to write a book, but I'm a published author. If you look in, she wrote an essay about this called Overcoming Obstacles, which she wrote as popsicles, but it was, she was only 8 or so years old. And I published it exactly the way she wrote it. And do you have a mic there, honey? Oh, great. This is my daughter, Sid. She's now 21 and gorgeous. And, you have some warts coming here. Oh, those are pimples, okay. So tell them what happened a little bit.
Well, I was about 6 years old, and like he said, I had a rash. It started here, and I don't remember what they looked like, but I just remember that it felt really bumpy and pretty gross. So, and it started to spread, and they had taken me to a dermatologist once before, and he said that they could burn them off, or that they might go away on their own. So, obviously as a child, I didn't want anyone burning my face, so I said, no, I'll wait to see if they go away. I was a pretty stubborn child. I wasn't going to let them be burned off. So yeah, but then about, I don't know, 6 months or so went by, and it was only getting worse, especially in the sun. It would really come out. And we were in Hawaii in the sun every day, and they were getting very bad, spreading over, like he said, towards my eyes, and I had issues with my eyes. So my parents took me to a dermatologist in Hawaii named Kenny Mallet, and he said that I had 2 options. He said that I could either burn them off, or that I could take a medication that may or may not work, and my face would get very red, I'd have to stay out of the sun, it would burn, and it wouldn't be pleasant, and it may not work, like he said. And then my parents were in the room, and they said to me, well, why don't you try to heal yourself? Why don't you try to talk to them? And as a child, I was only 6 years old, and I had been raised on the idea that turning to medication first it's not the first option. You should try and heal yourself. Like if I had an ear infection, my parents didn't run and get me antibiotics every time. It would go away, and I could deal with it. So as a 6-year-old, my parents said to me, maybe you can heal yourself, and I had no doubt in my mind that I could. They said I could talk to them, and the dermatologist agreed. He didn't doubt it either. He said, well, there's your third option. You can go home and talk to them. So,
this is how she was raised.
And I felt confident with the idea that I could go home and talk to them. So I went home that night, and we were all in Hawaii, and I was sharing a room with like 5 of my siblings. And I had an air mattress, and I got under the covers, and I pulled them over my face, and I got a flashlight, and in my head I talked to them. And I did that 3 nights in a row. And I would say the same thing every night, repetitively. And on the 4th night, and I don't know if my parents even knew I was doing this, you know?
Well, I would walk by the room and look in the room, and I said to Mom, come in here. This was, late at night, everybody else was asleep, and I said, well, she's under a blanket with a flashlight. Look at that. And we both looked and said...
It talked in my head.
And we just, walked back in and said, well, she's got a flashlight and she's doing what she's doing under the covers. When I was a kid and had the flashlight under the covers, I was doing something totally different. That's a different story altogether. Sorry, I didn't mean it.
I did that 3 nights in a row. And I repeated what I would say to them in my head, and then on the 4th night I got in bed to do it, and I just touched my face, and it was smooth. There was nothing there, and I had been used to this uneven skin. It felt like, for me, for my whole life, because I was only 6 years old, but it had been about a year. And it was completely smooth, and I jumped out of my bed, and I ran into my parents' bed, jumped in their bed, and I said, they're gone. And they felt it, and they were gone. They really were, and they've never come back. And so my parents asked me, well, what did you say?
Even when you wrote the essay,
yeah.
She wrote the essay for the book, and it's in there exactly as she wrote it in her own little language. She says at the end, I cannot tell you what I said. And that was, you were what, 10 or not, 8?
I was like 9 when I wrote the essay, right. But I was like 6 when this happened. And I think I didn't want to tell because I was like embarrassed, you know? And then as time was on, I just hadn't told anybody. They would ask me, my dad would say, what did you say? This is a miracle. I'm not telling you.
She wouldn't tell for 10 years. She would not tell me. She said it's a secret, you know.
And then, they kind of stopped asking me, and like 5 years ago, I was with my dad, and I said, well, you know what, I'll just tell you what I said. I don't care anymore. I'm mature now. And I said I just sent them love. I told them that I loved them, and that, that we couldn't be together anymore. And I pictured them falling off of my face. I was only 6. But in my mind, I had no doubt that that would work. I really believed that it was going to happen. It wasn't like I thought this might work. I thought, I'm talking to my bumps and they'll be gone. I didn't give them a time frame. I didn't say you have to be gone in a week. I just pictured them falling off, and I told them that I loved them, and that I knew that they would leave. And I told them that they could come back, but that they couldn't come back as flatworts, that we could be together in another form, things like that.
Wow, what a great story. I told Kenny, the dermatologist, because I go there every 3 months to have things burned off and all of the things that they do when you get older, and you're blonde and you live in the sun all your life. And I told him that story, and I said, she finally told me what it was that she told her flatworts. And he said, what was it? And I said, she said, I just sent them love and told them that they were welcome to leave, but I just loved them. And I wasn't angry at them at all. And he broke down crying. Literally tears came down his face. He said, I've never, ever heard such a wonderful story. So that was great. It's very interesting because I think I learned something from you about that as a little 6-year-old, what you decided to do when I found out that I had this diagnosis of leukemia. And people would ask me, are you beating it? Are you, it's always, do you think you'll defeat it? Do you think you'll fight it? Are you fighting it? And I don't use words like fight and defeat and beating and like it's a contest. I just talk to whatever it is that's going on in my body and say to it, we can live together. I think cancer is in all of us. It's just part of our world, and for some people, we live with it harmoniously, and others, we destroy it. It destroys us. And if we learn to just not be so bellicose, not so angry and fighting things, every time we declare war on anything, it just gets worse. The war on drugs. I mean, oh my goodness, has that worked? These wars, the war on poverty. It's like you don't declare war on things. You do what St. Francis said. He said, Lord, he didn't say, please give me some peace. I don't have any peace. Please, everywhere I go, I need peace. He said, make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, let me be like what I came from. So whatever cancer things going on in my body, and I've had skin cancers, and they say that, any man over 60 or so has got some form of prostate cancer of some kind. And so I just talk to whatever these things are in my body, and I just say, you want to live with me? Live harmoniously. You're welcome to be on my body if that's what you need to do. But I invite you to leave. if you want to do damage. It sounds strange, but from a 6-year-old who sent away something that she was told, and she was also told that they may never go away, that you may have a disfigured face, and look at that face. I take total credit for that face. We're walking in an airport one time, and she's there with her sister Serena, and somebody looked at her, and then they looked at Serena, and they looked back, and then they looked at me, and the woman said, "Your mother must be very beautiful." And so when I think about miracles, that's just one, and it's like these everyday miracles, like the suitcase, and then a few years ago I was speaking in New York City, and at the Omega Institute, that had put on a big program up there. And a woman from Africa approaches me, she didn't even know who I was. She just saw a lot of people hanging out there looking for an autograph. There was a line that wound all the way around the hotel out there because I had just given a lecture and people wanted me to sign books and things. And she just said she just got in the line. And she didn't know what it was, and she came up to me and she said, she spoke in very halting English, and she said, "My name is Immaculate Ilabegiza." It took me a long time to be able to say that name. And she said, I was in Rwanda during the Holocaust in 1994. And the night before, how these things happen, I had seen this movie called Hotel Rwanda. And it was about the Holocaust in Rwanda and the terrible things that went on back there. And, from Easter to the 4th of July, those 91 days. And so I asked her if, I said, "Do you know what happened back there in Rwanda?" Because she told me she was from Rwanda. I said, "Do you know what happened back there?" She said, "Yes, I do." She said, "I hid in a bathroom for 91 days with 6 other women, without any food, hardly at all, and with us being violated. And war had been declared there on each other, the Hutus versus the Tutsis, and the Hutus were out there slaughtering Tutsis. To the tune of, Rwanda is a country the size of the state of Maryland, a tiny little state, and between 800,000 and 1 million people were slaughtered in 90 days with machetes. And bodies were left all strewn virtually in every area, from the capital all through the rural areas. And I said, "I really would like to tell your story." And she said, "Well, I've written a book," but I said, "Well, get it to me." I said, I gave her my daughter Sky's email address, and I said, "Just email me. I want to talk to you about it." I couldn't take much more time there. She was a beautiful woman and just a sensitive soul. Turns out that she was a saint, in my opinion, and is a saint, walking on this planet as someone who survived circumstances that defy logic, that this shouldn't have happened. And she contacted me and sent me this manuscript of things that she had just written out. Now, her first language is an African language. Her second language is French. And her third language was English, which she learned while she was in the bathroom. So, and she was hidden for 91 days, and found Christ in those 91 days. And machetes were inches away from her being killed, and she could see them through the crack in the door, and they never found her. And I'm not going to go into the whole story. She wrote a wonderful book about it. It's a very powerful book. I called Reed at Hay House, my friend, and I said, "It doesn't matter. We've got to find somebody that can help put this manuscript. We've got to tell this story." And Reed always listens when I do that. When I tell him that, and I said, I will write the foreword to that book, and I will take her around the country and put her on my public television special and have her speak at my talks for a couple of years and tell her story, because her story is so important and so profound, because it's a miraculous story of healing through spirit. When she was finally released, I can't remember the exact details, but she weighed about 135 or 40 pounds. She's about 5'9" or 5'10", and just a stunning woman. She looked like she stepped off of Vogue magazine cover. She's so beautiful. And when she came out of the bathroom after 91 days, she weighed under 100 pounds. I mean, she was just totally all skin and bones. And she was 100 yards or so from the French compound where she would have been safe. And on her way to get in there, she was stopped by what's called the Interahamwe. And the Interahamwe were people who were doing the slaughtering, and they left no one. It didn't make any difference if it was a grandmother, if it was a baby, they slaughtered everyone. And there she was, after surviving for 91 days in hiding, facing down this man with a machete. And she talked him out of it with her eyes. She looked him right in the eyes and said, "You put that machete down. You are through killing." And he did. And she walked on down the street, the road there, and went to the French, and was ultimately survived, came to America, worked for the United Nations, and then I became a big factor in her life. Hay House became a big factor in her life. They published her book. It was called Left to Tell. Reed hired a writer to co-author it with her and show her, how to write in English, tell her story. I wrote the foreword, put her on all of my shows, took her around the country, to standing ovations wherever we went. And today, her book Left to Tell, is a huge international bestseller. And she lectures still continuously all over the world. Miracle. Absolute miracle. This woman has something that burns in her soul, that she did survive this Holocaust in order to tell her story, so that we could all become more aware of the miraculous capacity within each and every one of us. But even beyond that, beyond the stories that I've been telling you thus far, is a story of another one of those synchronistic events. A woman in New York, her name is Mira Kelly. She's an attorney. And she contacted me through the mail and asked if I would be willing to do she's a student of Brian Weiss's, and she had asked if I would be willing to do a past life regression with her, because she felt that there was something that, if I could figure out what it was in my past, could help me with my own healing. And she sent me something that I'm going to share a bit with you here today. She sent me something from a woman named Anita M. Her name, it turns out, is Anita Borjani. And she had a near-death experience about 5 years ago. And she sent it to me. It's 21 pages long and single-spaced. People send me so much stuff in the mail. I mean, I get boxes and boxes of mail every day. But something about this one, I set it aside and decided that I would look at it. And I said to her, she said, "I'd like to come to Maui and do this regression thing with you." And I was nice to her, but I really didn't want to do it. But I didn't say no, I didn't say yes. I just said, "Well, if you're on Maui and you want to contact me, that would be all right." And she said, when will you be there? I said, "Well, in April I'll be there from about the 5th or 6th of April until around the 1st or 2nd week in May. I think I have to go do so I'll be here." She said, "Okay," and that was it. And one day the phone rang and she said, "Hi, it's Mira, and I'm over in Wailea, and and I'll be here for a week. What day can you do this past life regression? That happened, you know. Like, why didn't I just say no? You know, but now I got to deal with somebody wanting to do time and But what I've learned is that when something is really hard to say no to, that there's probably a reason why it's hard to say no to. Because I'm pretty good at saying no. I've had to get good at saying no. Otherwise, I would do nothing but read manuscripts all day, because I get about 1,000 a month sent to me for things, and I obviously can't read them. So she showed up, and I said, well, I'll be here on the 14th of April, and if you want to come over like at 10 o'clock, I said, but I can only give you a half an hour, you know. She said, well, it'll take a little longer to do a half. I said, well, maybe an hour. And she came, my daughter was there, Serena was there, and she knocked on the door precisely at 10 o'clock, didn't ask me directions, I just gave her the address, and she showed up. And it's hard to find things on Maui, but she was right there at 10 o'clock. It was like she was sent, somehow she was sent by some divine force, I don't know. And I spent half a day with her, or longer, and did this past life regression. The entire thing will be in my book, because she recorded it and then transcribed it, and you can't even edit it. I told them at Hay House, you don't have permission to edit. This is how it came out. And I'm not going to go into the past life thing. That's not the whole reason for it. She was the one that sent me this thing that I'm going to share with you in a few moments about Anita. And I did the whole past life thing. She was a very nice person. She left, and she sent me the transcription of it and so on. And I did and I read the 21-page near-death experience of Anita M. that you can find on the internet. And I called, and when I finished reading it, I realized that this woman had come into my life for a much bigger reason. And so I called Reed and I said, look, I want to get this published. This is just too good. She was raised in Singapore. She lives now in Hong Kong, and I'd really like to have this book published. And I will write a foreword to it and an introduction, whatever is necessary, because I just think the message, because it just touched me so profoundly. And I'm going to share a little bit with what was in there. I'm going to read just a little bit of it here for you. This is her story. She said, I had cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. And on this morning I could not move. My husband rushed me to the hospital where, after doing scans, they diagnosed me with grade 4B lymphoma, the highest grade. The senior oncologist looked at my report and told my husband that it was too late and that my organs were now shutting down. I had only 36 hours to live. However, the oncologist said he would do whatever he could, but prepared my husband that I would most likely not make it, as my organs were no longer functioning. They started me on a chemotherapy drip as well as oxygen, and then they started to take tests, particularly on my organ functions, so that they could determine what drugs to use. Now, I've talked to her since, come to know her. She's going to be in my public television special that we're going to do in October. She's got a book contract with Hay House. I'm going to write the foreword. It's called Dying to Be Me. I was doing my radio show, and I had been talking about this took place a week before the John of God experience that I told you about, the surgery and then the removal of the sutures. And I'm doing my radio show. My radio show has, I think, 8 lines coming in, and there's never an opening on it. It's almost impossible to get in. And Diane, the lady who runs the show, said, oh, we have a call here from Hong Kong. Let's take that call. It was Anita calling my radio show. She had set the alarm to get up at 4:30 in the morning in Hong Kong, which is when the show airs there at 5 o'clock in the morning there. And I spent, if you want to go on hayhouseradio.com and look at the May 2nd, 2011 show, you'll see what we talked about. And it's just so interesting how all of this took place and how all of this transpired. Because now, she's going to share with the world a miracle that rivals any miracle that we'll see on this journey or any journey in our lives. She had 24 tumors the size of lemons throughout her entire body. They had metastasized into her legs and into her abdomen, into her back, into her breasts, into her throat, and they had written on her medical records that she would expire that night. All of her organs, her vital organs, had totally shut down. And they had written on the medical report what the prognosis was, which was death. I was drifting in and out of consciousness during this time, and I could feel my spirit actually leaving my body. I saw and heard the conversations between my husband and the doctors taking place outside my room, about 40 feet away down a hallway. I was later able to verify this conversation to my shocked husband. Then I actually crossed over to another dimension where I was engulfed in a total feeling of love. I also experienced extreme clarity of why I had this cancer, why I had come into this life in the first place, what role everyone in my family played in my life in the grand scheme of things, and generally how life works. The clarity and understanding I obtained in this state is almost indescribable. Words seem to limit the experience. I was at a place where I understood how much more there is than what we are able to conceive in our three-dimensional world. I realized what a gift life was, and that I was surrounded by loving spiritual beings who were always around me even when I did not know it. The amount of love I felt was overwhelming, and from this perspective I knew how powerful I am, and I saw the amazing possibilities we as humans are capable of achieving during physical life. I found out that my purpose now would be to live heaven on earth, using this new understanding, and also to share this knowledge with other people. However, I had the choice of whether to come back into life or go towards death. I was made to understand that it was not my time, but I always had the choice if I chose death. If I chose death, I would not be experiencing a lot of the gifts that the rest of my life still held in store. One of the things I wanted to know was that if I chose life, would I have to come back to that sick body? Because my body was very, very sick, and the organs had stopped functioning. I was then made to understand that if I chose life, my body would heal very quickly. I would see a difference in not months or weeks, but days. I was shown how illness starts on an energetic level before they become physical. If I chose to go into life, the cancer would be gone from my energy and my physical body would catch up very quickly. I then understood that when people have medical treatments for illnesses, it rids the illness only from their body, but not from the energy, so the illness will return. I realized if I went back, it would be with a very healthy energy. Then the physical body would catch up to the energetic conditions very quickly and permanently. Okay. So that's the opening of what I want to speak about with Anita. This idea that all illness has a precondition called an energy body. It's a hard one for those of us who experience physical illnesses in their body have to deal with, because very often guilt is associated with this. What did I do wrong in order to bring this thing into my life? I have come to understand with leukemia that leukemia itself is not necessarily a disease before it gets to an extreme stage. That in fact, it is a body's way of healing. And then it is a body's way of healing, possibly, from deep psychological traumas. Very often, the trauma of feeling as if you have failed in a relationship as a partner. And God knows I've got lots of that. Feelings like that in my life. Feeling as if I had failed. Feeling as if I was abandoned when I was a little boy by my parents. Going through 2 divorces and a separation. And knowing that a big part of that was due to my own inability to be the kind of partner that I would like now to think of myself as being. Because true nobility, I've often said, is not about, it's not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than you used to be. And that if you were to look at, say you cut your arm, and you look at your arm after you've cut it, and you see what happens there. A scab begins to form. Inflammation surrounds the cut. It gets very red. Very often pus will show up there around the cut. And if independently you just looked at that thing on your arm with the pus and with the red inflammation and with the scab, dried up scab showing up in there, you would say, oh my God, that's really a bad thing. Let's get that off of this person's body right away. Let's cut it out. But we know that that's the body's way of healing. Very often we forget that this is also possible in all kinds of things that are going on in our bodies. That we have, in fact, the reactions of our body are to very often psychological traumas or deep, lacking spiritual traumas that have taken place, and our body's way of healing from those traumas is to increase the amount of white blood cells, for example, to show that we have, very often, I talked to many doctors who've talked about cervical cancer and so on. Dr. Christian Northrup, for example, I've spoken to many times about this. And she doesn't recommend, panicking when you have an elevated pap smear test of some kind. That she said you measure it again a week later and it'll be different. You measure it a month later and it'll be, and the body, very often, this is just the body's way of healing. Not always, but very often we jump too quickly into this idea that we have to treat it with drugs, with radiation or surgery and so on. And that I became convinced that the leukemia diagnosis that I have is really my body's way of healing myself from psychological traumas that I've carried around since I was a little boy living in an orphanage. And up until now, through marriages, through relationships, through struggles and so on. And that if I can recognize that and change around the energy body, the kinds of things that bring these need for this healing into my life, then the leukemia can dissolve. Now, other things have taken place as well. I miraculously met a woman who's in the audience today, Pam McDonald, who's written a book, again, another book that I wrote a foreword to, called The Perfect Gene Diet. And I was told to alter the kinds of food that I eat so that they balance with my genetic blueprint. Because genetically, we all have certain blueprints and we have certain kinds of genes that carry cholesterol in a certain way. And she went through that with me, and I changed my diet and started feeling better, had higher energy, lost weight, did many, healthy kinds of things. Another one of those miraculous things. I could spend an hour talking about how we came into contact. But I began to realize that the energy body that we have is something that we have the capacity to heal, regardless of what stage our disease process may have evolved into. Now, we're here in a city where we are celebrating these amazing miracles. This little girl, Bernadette, at the age of 14, has 18 visitations, and we see that, she was told where to have water come up from the well, and that the drinking of this holy water can heal some people and so on. Part of what I see here in Lourdes is a lot of wanting some kind of external miracle to take place so that I can have this healing. And I think it's misdirected in a lot of ways. That we have to recognize that God is not something that's external to ourselves. That we're all pieces of God. That there's 160 people in the room, but there's only one mind. And that mind is the mind of God, and that which looks out from behind our eyeballs and processes the world is the mind of God. And so often we have left that mind and entered into a mind that of the ego, which is edged God out. That's what ego is, E-G-O, edging God out. And we've edged God out of our lives, and then when we get desperate, when we get sick, we want God as if it's something external to ourselves to step in and just make it happen for us, when in fact we have within us the power to look at the kind of energy that we are using that brings our bodies to these places of disrepair. And that it's never too late, it's never too late, it's never too late, that it's like we have within us at the when it's not our, it's like if you get that the universe is perfect, and that there's an organizing intelligence in all of it, and that you came into this world when you were supposed to. Abraham Maslow used to say to us, the flaw of self-actualizing people is that they get over death almost as if it didn't happen. Because to them it doesn't. Because we show up on this planet when we're supposed to, and we leave when we're called home. And all the time that we have in between, we have much more control over. I was speaking this morning about the anticipation of being in a place such as this. The beauty of it is it's the love that's here. It's the spirit that's here. It's the hope that's here. It's the awareness that we have so much more within us to heal not only ourselves, but to heal this planet. That we have that. And that's what brings me to Lourdes and Assisi and Medjugorje. That's what brings me there, is this this awareness of how powerful it is. When I talked to Anita, now Anita came back after her near-death experience, and 4 days later, cancer was gone from her body. 4 days. And I'm going to read a little bit more of what she says, because I think you're going to want to hear this. I took some quotes on this in preparation for today. I love the metaphor that she used, because they asked her the question about understanding what happened to her. And she said, I now know that a lot more exists than we are consciously aware of or capable of understanding. She said, every day I am understanding more and more since the near-death experience. I'm finding out that there are things I now feel I know or understand, which I never did before. The best example I can think of, she said, is to imagine there's a huge warehouse, which is dark, and you live in this warehouse with one flashlight. Everything you know about this warehouse is seen through the light of this one small flashlight. Whenever you want to look for something, you may or may not find it, but it does not mean that things do not exist. It is there, but you just haven't flashed your lights on. If you can only see what your light is focused on, then one day someone flicks on a light switch, and for the first time, you can see the whole warehouse. The vastness of it is what you can now see. It's almost overwhelming. You can't see all the way to the end, but you know there is more than what you can see. But you do see how all the products are lined up in all the shelves, and you notice just how many different things there are in the warehouse, which you never noticed, never even conceived of having existed. Yet they do, simultaneously, with the things you know. Those are the things your flashlight has been able to find. Then, even when the light switch goes back off, nothing can take away the understanding and clarity of your experience. Even though you are back to one flashlight, you now know how to look for things. You know what is possible. And you even know what to look for. You start viewing things differently. And it is from this new springboard that your experiences in life start to happen. And so I find that in my daily life, I'm referring to different aspects of my experience at different times. And I'm understanding things in a different way. And knowing things I did not know. That's how I feel about the suitcase. It's like, it And it still doesn't occur to me that I can just go around finding people's suitcases by just listening to an inner voice and go out there. But there's a part of me that just says, there's so much out there that I don't know. And what happened for Anita when she went into this near-death experience, this miraculous thing that occurred for her that no doctor can comprehend or even figure out. I'm going to share more with you because it's just so astonishing, and she is such a light in my life. Just talking to her and being honored to present to her, or present to the world rather, what it is that she learned. She says this. She says, I saw all people as energy. And depending where our energy level was, that was the world we created for ourselves. The understanding I gained from this was that if cancer was not in our energy, then it was not in our reality. If feeling good about ourselves was in our energy, then our reality would be positive. If cancer was in our energy, then even if we eradicated it with modern medicines, it would still come back. But if we cleared it from our energy, the physical body would soon follow. None of us are as real or physical as we think we are. From what I saw, it looked like we are energy first, and physical is only a result of expressing our energy. And we can change our physical reality if we change our energy. Some people have mentioned I use the term vibration. For me, personally, I was made to feel that in order to keep my energy vibration level up, I only had to live in the moment, enjoy every moment of life, and use each moment to elevate the next moment, which then elevates my future. It is that moment of elevating your energy level that you can change your future, like I did with my test results. It sounds very simplistic, but it felt very deep when I was experiencing and understanding it. That idea that we can change our future, that just so jumps out at me. Now, this is a woman who died. All of her vital organs shut down. She reported afterwards what the doctors were saying in rooms down the corridor to her husband. Okay, so she was seeing that, and from this place where this miraculous thing took place, because this is a journey about miracles. This is what this whole trip is about. It's about experiencing the miraculous. That what she discovered is what I was telling you about yesterday or the day before, is that these bodies that we're in are always changing. So therefore, they're not real. The one that you were in when you were 10 isn't real. The one that you were in when you came into this room won't be the same as the one you leave. It's not real. That all of this, as hard as this is for us to accept, is illusion. Now, I know that it's real in the sense that you believe in your senses. And your senses tell you, look, I can see it, I can touch it, I can smell it, it's real. But that's because you, me, all of us, have become so conditioned by the validation of something through our senses that we think that what we experience in our imagination is really the illusion. But it's not. Because as William Blake said, everything that now exists was once imagined. Which means that anything that you would like to have exist, you must be able to imagine. Your imagination, again from William Blake, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour. We're all led to believe a lie when we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. The imagination. If you can get this, this is what my new book is really all about. It's about the power of placing something into your imagination so strongly that it is not just something that you hope will become, it becomes an I am. And I am is the name of God. I mean, as Moses was asking God in Exodus in the Torah, you know, who shall I say has sending me to Israel to free my people? Who shall I say? And God says to him, tell them, my name is I am that I am. And for all future generations, this shall be my name. I am. Guess what? You can say I am. Mosquitoes can't. Tomatoes can't. Walruses can't. But you can. And whenever you use the term I am, you're using the name of God to define yourself. And if you say, I will be, I hope to be, I may be, I'm counting on it, I'm setting it as my objective, you're desecrating the name of God, which is what you are. Because to say I will be is to what? Say I am not. And how could God say I am not? God didn't say I am not. God said, I am that I am. I am thou. We are all God. And our name is I am. In the book of Joel it says, let the weak man say, I am strong. Virtually everything that Jesus said started with I am. I am the way, the truth, and the light. I am the resurrection. I am the door that no man closeth. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am. I am. And he said even before Abraham was I am. You can use the name I am and place after it not what you would like to become, but what you already are in your imagination. And when you do that, you know, there's a famous, we all took philosophy classes, and René Descartes, the famous French mathematician and philosopher, said, what? I think. What? Therefore, I am. Get it wrong. Backwards. I am. That's God's name. I am. Therefore, I think. Therefore, all after that. I am. And right here, it's so interesting because I read the whole biography of St. Bernadette before I came, and so did my daughter Serena. And I was thinking about, she had 18 apparitions. That number 18 shows up a lot. In Hebrew, anybody in here, anybody Jewish? What does 18 mean in Hebrew?
Life.
Say it out loud.
Life.
Life. Chaim, right? Life. Lahan. Lahan. Life. I've always thought about writing a book about the Bhagavad Gita. There's 18 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, taking those 18 verses and writing sort of like a contemporary way of looking at that from my point of view. 18 verses, 1, 8. 1, infinite source. 8 is infinity. 1 infinite source. But before I did that, or do that, or think about that, I decided to do the Tao Te Ching. And when I went to get to Tao Te Ching and look at it, in every edition of the Tao Te Ching, how many verses are there? 81. 81, exactly. The Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita created about the same time, 5,000 or so BC. Both of them, 1 infinite source ones. And there are 18 holes on a golf course. I mean, come on. But the number shows up over and over and over again. And here we come here to this beautiful place in Lourdes in France. And how many apparitions did she have? Exactly. 18. And on the 9th apparition, the 9th visit, she was told, because nobody believed little Bernadette, she was only 4'7". This little being who was placed in the ground in 1879, I believe, and left there for 30 years until 1909. They exhumed her body from a wooden box, and it was incorrupt, exactly as it was when it was placed into the ground. 30 years in a box. They put her body back into the ground and exhumed it 10 years later in 1919. It's now 40 years. Her body is incorrupt. They put it back into the ground, and 6 years later they exhumed it because she was being considered for sainthood, which she achieved in 1933, I believe. And now you can visit her body with no preservatives of any kind, an incorrupt body. How do we explain this? You know, this little being who, and when they asked, what is her name? What is her name? Ask her her name, because she just kept saying, oh, just see this blessed being, and she talks to me. What is she? Ask her name. Ask her name. And what does she say her name is? I am the Immaculate Conception. That's the only name that she gave. And at the time, as I was reading her story, all of the priests said, well, it's not possible, because the Immaculate Conception is an event. And grammatically, I am, you can't be an event. And then they were reminded that Jesus said, I am the resurrection. The resurrection is an event. When you say I am, you're saying God is the Immaculate Conception. God is the resurrection. God. And when you say I am, and you say I am tired, I am poor, let me read to you just a few little words from the I Am discourses, which I have studied, practiced. I have my kids reading. Having placed before you so often the truth of God in action, this is from Saint Germain in the I Am discourses, I wish you to understand its first expression in individualization. The first expression of every individual, everywhere in the universe, either in spoken word, silent thought, or feeling is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, you and I, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression, in word or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you. The great presence within you is the I am presence, the presence of God. And you, and only you, are capable of saying it and being it. But when you place something into your imagination, you must be able to live from that place, not toward it. Trusting not in what your senses tell you, because they report to you on an illusion, on that which is changing, but trusting in your imagination, the soul, which is not, it is birthless, it is deathless, and it is changeless. When you begin to trust in that, and I suggest that little Sage, when she was 6 years old, was trusting in that, saying to herself, I am free of these things. Like when people ask me about leukemia, I say, I am leukemia free. I am free of leukemia. Well, have you had your tests done? I am free of leukemia. I am, when we said to Nicolette, the 20-year-old girl that I talked to you about with the paralysis, I made her say over and over again, I am paralysis free. I am. And her mother said, well, maybe then when you get back you'll be free. And she said to her in her typical 20-year-old stance, she said, what part of I am paralysis free don't you understand? Those were her words. Remember? Those were her words. And sure enough, she will, because when you declare it, and you don't even have to ask, you command it, because you are God after all. I am free. I am wealthy. I am kind. I am happy. I am content. I am free of addictions. I am. I declare it. I am. And when you declare it and live from it, then you assume the feeling of that wish fulfilled. And when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you experience it in your body, because anything that you want to understand intellectually, you cogitate on it, you think about it, you analyze it, and the first 4 letters of analyze are anal. So you analyze, cogitate, think about it. But if you want to change something spiritually and understand something spiritually, you don't do it that way. You have to experience it. You have to experience it in your body, and the only way you experience it in your body is you feel it. As Neville says, you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You make your future wish a present fact, and you live from that. And you ignore any attention that anybody else attempts to place on you, telling you it can't work, it won't work. When Anita was in her near-death experience coma, she was in a coma for 20 hours. And let me just share a little bit more about what she learned, because I don't want to pass this up. Get a little water here. She said, when I was in the NDE state, it felt like I had woken up to a different reality. It felt like I had awoken from the illusion of life, and from that perspective, it looked like my physical life was just a culmination of my thoughts and beliefs up to that point. It felt like the whole world was just a culmination of the thoughts and beliefs of the entire collective. That is, the culmination of everyone's thoughts and beliefs. It felt like nothing was actually real, but we made it real with our beliefs. I understood that even my cancer was not real. It was also part of the illusion. So if I went back to my body, I would not have the cancer anymore. And another thing is that there was this incredible understanding of how we are all interconnected, and how what I felt within me affects my whole universe. I felt one with everything. I felt a connection with every living thing, and it felt like the whole universe is within me. As far as I'm concerned, if I am happy, the universe is happy. If I love myself, everyone else will love me. If I am at peace, the whole universe is peaceful, and so on. Also, she said, time and space feel very different in that dimension. It doesn't feel linear like it does here. It felt like everything was happening simultaneously. I saw what could be interpreted as past lives. I saw what was happening currently, and I also saw the future of this life all pan out. But it was as if they were all happening at once, and I was living them all at once. It felt like only after coming back, my mind has to process it as happening in linear time, but in that dimension, where I was in my NDE, it didn't feel that way at all. And also, distance and solid walls did not stop me from seeing and hearing everything that pertained to me at that time. So, what I'm presenting here to you is how you heal your energy body. And one of the ways that you heal your energy body is you begin to feel one with everything. As the Native Americans would say, no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. So that we're all one. That was one of the first. Now the second is, they ask her, they say, wow, I could only imagine an experience like that would mess with your mind. So can you tell me more about how this affected the way you think and process information? She said, well, first of all, my view of the world has totally been blown apart. Over these months, I've had doctors telling me over and over that what happened to me is completely unexplainable. Medically, it should not be possible. They can't figure out where the billions of cancer cells went in just a matter of days. Medically, every way they look at it, I should have died. My organs were shut down. Either the cancer should have killed me, the drugs should have killed me, or the billions of cancer cells trying to leave, flooding my already shut down organs, should have killed me. In view of what physically happened to me, I am no longer able to see any physical disability in the same light any longer. Where in my own mind I would draw the line between what is fixable or curable and what is not, by what scale of logic would draw these conclusions from? Certainly not from what is medically possible. I can't apply that to my life anymore. The word impossible has no meaning to me anymore. The boundaries of what is possible or not is very shady to me. I look at everything in our reality, including things like illness and aging, so differently. I challenge anything that is considered natural or normal. To me, now, everything feels like human construct that is just another product of personal and mass belief. Having had the experience I have, it feels like nothing is real, but every single possibility exists. So then she went on to talk about how we heal our energy body by this enormous feeling of being loved. She said that when I came back, what I realized was that all I had to do was treasure my magnificence. Those were her words. I love those words. Treasure my magnificence. I mean, those of you who have heard Louise Hay speak over the years, you know, she always talks about look in the mirror and just say, I love you. Now, it sounds so simple, and sometimes people think, and Louise often says that, I'm a simple woman, just a simple woman with a simple message. And the simple message is, just love yourself. But listen to what she says about this. She said, so if someone's life was not working for them, how would you suggest they turn it around? She said, one of the most powerful things I got from my NDE is how loved I am. Unconditionally loved. So now I continue to love myself unconditionally. I would strongly suggest practicing unconditional self-love. Remember, I said that the universe is only a reflection of me. If I am frustrated with the way life is working, for me, it is futile to change the external elements without looking at what's going on internally. A lot of us are very negative towards ourselves. We are our own worst enemies. The first thing I would say is to stop judging yourself and to stop beating yourself up for where you are in your life right now. If I'm finding that I am constantly frustrated with people and judging them, it is because that is how I am internally treating myself all the time. I am only expressing outward my own inner dialogue to myself. The more I love myself unconditionally, the easier it is for me to see beauty in this world and beauty in others. If I can love myself and not judge myself and see my own perfection, then I will automatically see all these in others. And the more I love myself, the more love I will have for others. It's not possible to love another more than you love yourself. Contrary to popular belief that it's selfish to love yourself, that is just not true. We cannot give away what we do not have. No matter where you are, it is only the culmination of your thoughts and beliefs up to that point, and you can change it. She says, remember, I reversed my cancer at the 11th hour. Even when the doctor said it was too late, it was still not too late. So the first thing is to realize that it is never too late to do something or change anything. It's important to see the power that the present moment holds in turning your life around. If you believe in things like attracts life, then the absolute best way to attract what's best for you is to love yourself to the point where you are filled with love and will only attract to your life everything that confirms this belief about yourself. It's actually very simple, really. And she finally concluded this, when you realize your own magnificence, you will only attract magnificence into your life. That's how I look at it. And that's what she learned in her near-death experience. That she said, I didn't come back from that and think that I had to be a loving person, because that involves having to do something. She said, I had to come back and be love. Be love. Patanjali, the great Indian teacher back in the 3rd century BC, said, when you are steadfast, steadfast means you never slip. He said, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's what St. Francis was. That's why he could talk to the birds and to the wolves. When you're steadfast, when you hold that energy within you, when they ask her at the very end of this long interview, they ask her, and the fact that this was just sent to me by somebody, and now this has become not only a friend, but a colleague and an author at Hay House, I am beyond thrilled. They said, if there was a message or a lesson from your near-death experience that you wish everyone could know or understand, something that you wish you could shout out from the rooftops, they said, what would it be? Now remember, a woman who was dead and now is cancer-free. I would want everyone to know that every part of you is magnificent. Your ego, your mind, your intellect, your body, your spirit, your soul, it's who you are. a beautiful product of this universe's creation. Every part of you is perfect. There is nothing to let go, nothing to forgive, nothing to attain. You already are everything you need to be. We make it so complicated, but it's not. If a religion makes you feel lesser than God, then you have either misinterpreted or it is not doing a good job of teaching you the truth. If a guru or a teacher or a master makes you feel that you are not yet enlightened and still have more to learn, release or let go of before getting there, then they are not doing a good job of teaching you who you are or you're misinterpreting them. Most of our suffering stems from our feeling less than. We are not less than anything or anyone. We are complete. The only thing you need to learn is that you already are what you are seeking to attain. Just express your uniqueness with abandon. That's why you are made the way you are, and that's why you are in this physical world. That's what she learned from her brush with death. And now is out there not only writing about it, but telling people that it is in your magnificence. I want to just close with an observation from Francesco again. St. Francis was on his way to Africa. And he was there to go with the Crusades and talk to the people, the Christians who were out there murdering Muslims all over the place, to talk to them about that isn't the message of Christ. And he said to them, disperse now, my brothers, my children, disperse with my blessing to the four corners of the earth. The entire world is God's field. Plow it and then sow poverty, love, and peace. Strengthen the world that is tottering and about to fall. Strengthen your souls and elevate your hearts above wrath and ambition and envy. Do not say me, me. Instead, make the self, that fierce, insatiable beast, submit to God's love. This me does not enter paradise, but stands outside the gates and bellows. Listen now to the parable I shall tell you before we part. Remember it well, and let it be a remembrance of me, my children. Once there was an ascetic who struggled his whole life to reach perfection. He distributed all of his goods to the poor, withdrew into the desert, and prayed to God night and day. Finally, the day came when he died. He ascended to heaven and knocked on the gates. Who is there? Came a voice from within. It's me, answered the ascetic. There isn't room for two here, said the voice. Go away. The ascetic went back down to earth and began to struggle all over again. Poverty, fasting, uninterrupted prayer, weeping. His appointed hour came a second time and he died. Once more he knocked at the gates of heaven. Who's there? Came the same voice. Me. There isn't room for two here. Go away. The ascetic plummeted down to earth and resumed his struggle to attain salvation even more ferociously than before. When he was an old man, a centurion, he died and knocked once again on the gates of heaven. Who's there? Came the voice. Thou, Lord, thou. And straightway the gates of heaven opened, and he entered. I am that. God bless you.